Through more than 2 decades at Kenner and Hasbro, Aaron built worlds, told stories, and designed toys for some of pop culture's biggest names, including Transformers, Batman, Star Wars, and more. Join him as he explores the archives and tells you the stories of the creative process behind your favorite toys. This is the Toy Armada with your host, Aaron Archer.
And we are back again for yet another Toy Armada with Aaron Archer, and I'm your host, Protoman. And what we're going to be doing today is pretty much celebrating the 20th anniversary. Again, we're doing another anniversary item. 20th anniversary of a figure that came out 20 years ago from the Transformers Armada brand. And it's also timed perfectly because he will be getting a brand new figure in 2024 of the Titan scale. We'll get into that in a moment, but first, Aaron, how you doing?
I'm great today. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. So what today we're going to be talking about is back in 2003 in the toy shelves of whether it be KB Toys, Toys R Us, whatever, Market 6 stuff was going on at the time, Kmart, Walmart. We're going to be talking about Transformers Armada Tidal Wave and how this figure was put together, his interesting history, and then kind of a reflection moving forward because this character, despite him being very popular with the fans, didn't have many different figures, and now he's going to be getting one of the most prestigious proportion, that of the Titan class in 2024 through the Transformers Legacy United line. So where I want to begin with this is how this all pretty much came about. And the reason why I was always fascinated with, and why Tidal Wave is such a unique character, is that historically with Transformers, the good guy leader character in these little robot shows gets some kind of mid-season upgrade, some kind of combiner element or whatever. It started all the way back with Transformers Master Force in Japan, with Jinrai getting God Bomber and becoming God Jinrai. And then later with Transformers Victory, with Star Saber getting Victory Leo and becoming Victory Saber. And then when Takara did the spin-off, the Yusha Brave stuff, they continued that for the next 7 years, from 1990 to 1997. And then when we had Transformers Car Robots in the modern era, which was known as Robots in Disguise 2001 here, we had Fire Convoy, God Magnus, or as we know, Godfire Convoy. And in the West, it was Optimus Prime, Ultra Magnus, which became Omega Prime. And then in 2003, we have Transformers Armada. We know that Optimus Prime is going to be getting Jetfire to combine with it. But for the first time ever, a villain leader is going to also be getting a mid-season combiner element. It's never been done before. Never been, even with the Yusha Brave stuff, never been done in toy form. And Megatron was going to be getting this Tidal Wave character. So let's go to the beginning. How did this whole idea start, this concept? Was it just going to be a big figure, or was it going to be a big figure intended to be a combiner mid-season element? Where did this all begin?
Well, clearly it would have started with the price point that he was, which I think at the time was Gigacon.
I actually, because every time with Armada, they have those weird numbers. So I actually kept this because I knew this was going to come up. So Armada started a brand new set of price points. Like it's the same price points, just different naming conventions. The Minicon price point replaced the basic, which was what, prior to that with Beast Machines was like Obsidian and Mirage. There was Supercon, which was our deluxes. The Role Play, which was our megas, that was the Star Saber, Dark Saber Blade, the Laserbeak. The Max Con was the Ultras, and Tidal Wave was the Gigacon. And then Optimus Prime was the Super Base, and Unicron was the Supreme. So we're talking the Gigacon price point.
Yeah, so kind of upper end price point at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And it being, we wanted to have a villain. Now, I've often said that the combining part of this, which is the question you asked, was not a priority for Hasbro. Again, where this would have come out was probably more aligned with the Japanese Golden Week or some promotion for them.
July of 2003, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So the combining has always been special in Japan, and I think it was it sounds like a Hasbro kind of thing to have complementary options. So if you're gonna have a lot of add-ons to the good guy hero, maybe there should be a mirror to have a add-on to the bad guy. So I think when Takara presented that, we would have been accepting of it for that reason. I don't think we originated the adding to Megatron as a play pattern. But once they presented it, we were like, yeah, we can make this work for us. But and this is going to take us off into a different tangent. You can see where we worked really hard to make it a mini-con platform as best we could, in case you didn't, because we weren't going to communicate that combining the same way the Takara team would be.
Yeah, and when especially considering, again, up to that point, villain characters in the Transformer released stuff and Yusha Brave never got that mid-season product for them. It was always like the good guys got that mid-season product. So this was very different to see that. We're like, oh, hey, the Megatron toy is also going to get something. This Megatron toy that you bought at the beginning of this adventure is now going to get a product that adds to it, which, again, usually was just kind of reserved for the leader characters. So that was pretty interesting. So you mentioned, like, the whole platform element being a play set in a lot of ways. Is that, like, I guess we'll kind of get into, like, what this figure pretty much did. So it was multiple vehicles. It was dubbed the Dark Fleet on the Japanese side of things. These multiple vehicles, an aircraft carrier, a double-bowed kind of battleship, and a troop landing craft for, like, Normandy and stuff like that, I guess is kind of trying to be conveyed there. These three things combined to make a giant battleship. Now, was the three vehicles combining to make a battleship, was that from day one, or did they just want to make a giant transformer that transforms into a battleship, and the combining three-piece element was something that came afterwards, maybe due to the combining element? What happened there?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you some insight where we are here too. We're in the middle to later stages of Armada development. So at this point, Eric's definitely a co-op, because we started with the spaceship, what we called the spaceship, which is the combined vehicle mode. What was nice for Hasbro in that regard, we could say it was a boat, we could say it was a flying vehicle. It was kind of, it even had little wheels right underneath it, so you could kind of roll that vehicle. So that's why it played in that naval fleet sort of space, because there's space fleets as well as sea fleets. Yep. And Eric did a lot of conceptualizing of how to make those things kind of work together. So we must have had the three parts as a concept thought, as out there to figure out. But I remember particularly the spaceship drawings Eric did. I don't remember the three parts.
I just want to establish, so Eric Siebeneller was behind the initial design for this?
He would have been my hand at that time as a co-op to execute what we've been talking about. Okay. So I'd be like, this guy, it needs to be like an aircraft carrier. This one needs to be like a Harrier jump, like a hovercraft thing. So he would have done then sketches in that direction, kind of trying to find a sweet spot. He would not have been the designer of note, because he would have just been executional of like stuff I needed done. Okay. Now, I do not want to take away from the talent that he then brought to those sketches and how they clearly affected the final design. So this is the part of toy design that gets a little wonky.
That's why I ask.
Who did what doesn't always matter in the great scheme of things, because it's the blend of everybody's contributions that make the final product.
Well, that's why other names are going to come up later. That's why I'm curious where Eric's in this. Okay.
Yeah, so he did a lot of I remember, and I think they were in some of the binders that we sold at a BotCon for the auction. I think there are some of these images out there of kind of one or two color sketches of the Battleship. And then Eric and I took some passes at the head, and I think Eric, I think he either finished it or I finished his passes. That is how closely we worked at that time, that I don't always remember. I know I worked on it. I know Eric worked on it. I can't always recall which part was first or second. And that is true of the nature of how much we were grinding through and the collaborative nature of getting this stuff done. It's not about credit or who did this or who did that. It's we got to get this done. So with all due respect to the Takara people, I don't bring up enough, and other designers, you know, it does take quite a bit of a team to do any of these things. So I do want to acknowledge there's always more people than we can ever talk about. So anyway, I remember, and I'm looking over at my Tidal Wave, the aircraft carrier part was important because it had the realism we needed, right? It was a recognizable. I often talk about unrecognizable vehicles aren't good in general for kids, because if they can't say, oh, I want that truck, I want that plane, you know, I want that boat, you have a problem. You know, like Slug Slinger is a plane, even though it's really weird. But I would say Sharkticon and Energon, I don't know what a kid would call that. Is that a submarine? Is it a spaceship? Is it a shark? You know, hard to tell, and that probably doesn't help. But I digress. So the aircraft carrier was important because then we could go more fantastical with some of the other aspects of it. It was a platform. One, you know, had jump seats. The other had the deployment. Another had capture. Looking it up here.
We'll go through like each individual one. So the aircraft carrier part of it had the gimmick where it had a storage kind of thing to it, where the little mini-con of Ramjet could be stored in there.
Yep.
Kind of like it's like a little platform that goes up and down.
And Ramjet is the smallest mini-con.
Yep.
As a result, because we needed to not waste any space on that. So that's...
He folds up very tiny. He goes in there. Nice little storage capacity there with that one. The double-bowed Battleship, that's the one that has like the two big, I guess it's the one with the turrets on the top of it, and it has these two big bows in the front. It has two little missile launchers that are there too. Of course, they're spring-loaded. And then you have...
we called that like the attack ship. There was the aircraft carrier attack ship and the hovercraft. Yeah.
There you go. And then you got the troop landing craft. That's the one that has the seat. It has these two segments that fold up, and then there's little seats for your mini-cons could sit in there. I'd love to hear the story on how that came about. Did they just want to have that, like, the mini-cons could just kind of chill in there and sit down?
It was a most efficient way to try to get as many of them as we could. We were just trying every way we could. That went back to some of the early concepts we had around what the mini-cons would be doing, and we thought they'd be sitting in seats and stuff a lot more in the early days.
Well, it works.
A lot like, Diaclone.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, you're right.
It's similar belief, but in the end, they kind of just plug on over time. So that's an early remnant of how we thought how interactive the minicons might have been, or articulated the minicons might have been at a particular time.
So, again, it has that element to it too, and then of course it combines to make the giant space vehicle, or whatever you would want to call it, and then you have the minicon port on the top of all of it, which makes the turrets rotate. That's the minicon plug point. So
and
that's
that's my love letter to Battleship Yamato.
I imagine that's exactly where I was going to probably go.
Those big cannons on the front of that thing.
We were both dancing around saying that name first, because you were like, oh, space ships, but like more like something that's clearly a fleet. That's totally Yamato.
So there's no denying. I'm a kid of the late 70s. Battleship Yamato is what I brought it up on our other podcast. One of my favorites. So anytime that I needed some reference or thoughts, I might have gone back to that stuff.
It's Japan's love of aircraft carriers, and then it pretty much transferring into space.
Yep.
So let's get into before we move forward to, like, let's say how the combining stuff kind of got, like the Megatron combining stuff. So this was decided to be the GigaCon price point. It's oddly enough, it's the only GigaCon of Armada that doesn't have electronics. Probably, I would imagine, because it's going to do other stuff, in this case, the combining. Maybe also there probably wasn't the space for it to put in a battery pack or a voice box or something, where, again, all the other GigaCons had something that was either light up or a sound. But how did you guys decide on wanting it to be this big price point? Did they looked at, okay, we need another GigaCon for the case assortment? What is it?
Yeah, usually it would have been a compliment to who else was in there, Jetfire and
that's a good question.
Scavenger?
Probably,
no.
I think it was probably Jetfire, and that was probably it. It was probably 2 per case.
Just Jetfire,
yeah, Jetfire and him at the GigaCon price point. Yeah.
So the fact that he would have gone with another flying vehicle meant we probably wanted to have some sort of, playability connectivity of 2 flying things to combat each other.
And they're both the combining elements too.
Yeah. So I don't recall too much else at that time. The thing, this might trump where you want to be heading, but the thing that I always find really unique about Tidal Wave, and at the time I don't think anyone even brought it up, but it's one of the few combining Transformers where it's not 3 smaller robots combining to form a super robot. It's 3 vehicles forming to combine a big vehicle that then transforms into a big robot. I don't know if there is another combination that works that way in the brand across time. It's very strange. Usually there would be 3 mini bots.
The closest we have is Dual Cons, which were 2 vehicles that made a giant robot, but those 2 vehicles didn't combine to make another vehicle.
Yeah. So you can see where there's a little Guy Galgar in here.
Yeah, that's
residue. But it's very unique, and we went with it. This was a time where we didn't have a lot of rules yet. We hadn't self-imposed a lot of stuff on ourselves. And we were like, yeah, we could do a combining guy that doesn't have mini bots and and So I find it a very unique item if you go back in time. One of those weird innovations that we just haven't seen again.
Indeed. And especially that, again, combines with the villain, which I imagine, because we've talked about this in the past, how the Japanese market, outside of maybe Kaiju, maybe Gundam, but usually villain toys are usually not as well received as the good guy toys in Japan. And as a result, sometimes villain toys get the short end of the stick in terms of releases or numbers. And to do something that is a big price point add-on, not to the good guy, but to the bad guy, is also a very different approach to what has been being done, again, literally since like 1988 up to that point.
Well, one thing that was happening on the eastern side of things is Takara at this time is really trying to re-engage kids with the Transformer brand. So they saw it very much maybe how we would have seen Rescue Bots. This is a way where it's heavy toy. Let's get these young kids engaged in Transformers again, and these play patterns, and the combining aspect was a big deal, and they probably did want it on both hero and villain to get those younger kids, and the story concepts pretty in their vernacular, it's pretty straightforward and almost expected. Just hadn't done in Transformer.
And Transformers has always been one of those brands in Japan that actually had a stacked villain assortment every year. Obviously with a few exceptions, obviously, in its 40-year history, but they've always had a good amount of villain toys. Where you look at another very popular brand in Japan, which like the Sentai brand, which is what's called Power Rangers, almost no villain toys. It's non-existent.
Yeah, so in the concept, in the bigger social constructs of toy buying and whatnot, and hero and villain relationships with fans, and how one identifies with the story they're watching, Transformers, because of the puzzle play aspect and people liking what they like, colors, forms, names, might be one of the only that you can get a 1-to-1 ratio hero to villain where it's not a problem. Now, you might not get all those villains in a show, but as far as a product line goes, I was able to do magnitude more villains than any other toy designer ever got to do, right?
Yeah.
To your point. I mean, I was on Batman for 4.5 years. You know, we did 4 or 5 new villains. You know, like crazy. So Transformers is very unique that way because of the puzzle play and because of just you like what you like. Do you like jets? It's a villain. I don't care. It's a hero. I don't care. I like jets. There's a lot of ways to get that bite of the apple, as we used to say.
The next thing we're going to address also is, again, we've talked about this probably many times before in different segments, probably even live streams. The choice of the colors on both sides of the globe, going with that more military greens and purples as opposed to the straight up purples and blacks that were done with the Micron Japanese release. You've answered it before, but for completeness sake, we're going to answer it here again. Why the choices of different colors on both sides of the globe?
Okay, so let me take a half step back and let you know during the development of Armada, because for whatever reason, I don't know if this was something that built up over Beast Wars or what, Takara wanted Hasbro to take the lead on color design. So for whatever reason, I did the original deco for all the characters and or partners, co-ops, Eric Siebenahler, any number of people. That then became the basis of the color layout. And then clearly Takara toned those colors less shade, more true poppy colors, right? But the layout of the color on the two lines is often pretty similar, if I recall correctly. So, going back to the original question, we did a deco sheet for Tidal Wave on the Hasbro side. Everything was also, I should say, was very tight timelined. So we had to deliver sketches or deco input or mold layout input on very defined schedules, or this stuff will not happen. Okay, so we hit the point of no return. Well, I would call it a point of no return. We didn't realize it was a problem at the time, but we hit our date and turned in the color guide for Tidal Wave, which was the purple color that is in the show. So the original decided Hasbro Takara color palette was the purple. We hit the point of no return. It was in development. The model sheet was already done in purple on the animation side. That's locked. Okay, there's no going back at that point on the animation. So we're in a meeting on the Hasbro side. Me, Eric, Samantha Lomo, who was the head marketing at the time, maybe some other people, but not a large group. And we were looking at everything, or we had gone to the model shop to look at painted items. And it was just determined that we had a lot of purple in the line. We had Galvatron coming in. There was probably still Sideways out there. There was the red Demolisher redeco. Skywarp was purple and in that zone. So there were a few things that were happening that we just said, or I was asked, one of the only 2 times on my time on Transformers, I was asked by management to directly look at really thinking about changing a color, not ordered, but, hey, this could be, we could do better. And I agreed. And so I said, well, we can't change it for animation, but we can change it for our product. And there's not a lot of green in any toy line, but there's not a lot of natural green vehicles that aren't military based. So the opportunity to make it a little more green was both welcome to the line and fit with a military vibe that was kind of going on in that item. So we got lucky and we just had an easy swap, and it worked out for my management that we had a less purple character on the shelf. Now, we hit that point of no return on animation, so that was set. Takara is going to follow the animation, so their item is purple.
Yep.
On the Western side, I'm working on the Atari video game, so I'm giving them color guides that match our product. So Tidal Wave in the video game is green. And that's what happened. It was a necessary change for shelf variety that now has this life of its own, because now we've come back full circle with the item we will talk about, and it's the purple color. So all I can say is our original intent was to do purple. So it doesn't put me out at all that the green is starting to disappear. Purple was the original intent, so let's go for it.
Okay.
Did I cover it off there pretty good?
No, you covered that's exactly what I wanted. This question has come up so many times because it's one of those prime examples from the entire Armada show where you have one character that just doesn't look like his toy does in terms of the coloring. And it's a character that is beloved by fans, and the fact that there was an option to own it on the other side of the globe correctly always creates that discussion. Like, hey,
Sure.
Why was once, I almost feel if the purple version never existed, let's say Japan also got the green one, the conversation wouldn't even be there. It would just be like, oh, Tidal Wave's a little not show accurate. And it would be the end of that.
Yeah.
And then everyone would be like, oh, but he's accurate for the Atari game, for the Transformers Armada video game,
and
PlayStation 2.
And I think the air quotes of the word accurate, becomes the issue, doesn't it? Like,
yep. Well, that's always is. It's always that
to
pursuit.
What and when. Yeah. So that's why I want to point out, Eric and I, who did the deco, we picked purple. So we're not hurt in any way that the green is disappearing or somehow that Tidal Wave is rolling on without the official color or something. That never comes up.
Now the next question of East versus West. Let's talk about naming. So we'll start with the West. So Tidal Wave, how did that come about? Was that you who named them? Was it someone in copy?
Yeah, no, I named a lot of the Armada characters across the board, and we wanted something powerful and we wanted something nautical.
Brand new trademark too. Never used before. Not in the history of Transformers. Which Armada had a lot of past history of names being used, but this was a new one.
Yeah. And this goes to I think it was in the news. I think the Indonesian tsunami was in the news around then, if I'm not mistaken. So it just worked. I like names like that. So Tidal Wave just we could get it, and it's an easy get.
And then on the eastern side with Japan, they went with Shockwave, going more with probably what you guys were doing at the time, taking some of those old names and repurposing them onto newer characters. Coincidentally, also Shockwave from Generation 1 history, a traditionally completely purple character, kind of worked in that way. That's probably the only thing I can make that connection. Otherwise, Shockwave has one eye, it turns into a gun.
Yeah, I think that was I think that was why they used that name. Yeah, I don't know.
So, but that's what I was going to ask. Like, do you know, was Shockwave even considered at some point? Was it something you guys decided? Was that something that on the Takara side they looked at and went, well, it's completely purple. So
what I'll say, I can answer this to every item. Neither of our companies needed to or cared really what each named the items. Okay. We had different legal responsibilities, different legibility, different space, different traditions, different whatevers. And that was something we would refer to the items as we worked on them as sports car, superjet, sleek car, tow truck, leader truck, villain tank, because they might call it Gigatron, they might call it Megatron, we might call it Scorponok. It wouldn't
those
have
media
mattered.
Storytelling elements are after the fact.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. So I don't know that I knew a lot of the characters' names in the Japanese as we worked on them. I don't know that I would have known it was going to be called Shockwave. We just called it the spaceship or the boat. We had this weird working titles. I'll have to look it up in that other document I have. But
the big boat.
Yeah, and that's how we referred to them, because you're just trying to get a product done. All that overlay that's copy that comes later. That's legal QA, registered trademark stuff. That kind of comes in the middle, but not when you're developing the product, because you're going to put the product out even if you call it strawberry shortcake, even though it's a spaceship,
and you
like whatever name you have to put on it.
And you don't trademark something if you don't know that there's going to be a product on top of it. So while you're developing, it might not happen at all.
Absolutely. That's why it comes. So if a product is in 14-month development, you don't start the naming conversation with legal until probably month 4 or 5.
Yeah. And
it happens fast, because in month 5, 6, 7 is probably 8. You're having package copy finished, and has to go out, to the vendor. So it all happens kind of fast, but you don't worry about it first. That's why everything's working names. And we might call something Bumblebee for a long time, and then in the end have to call it something else. But that is the nature of how the legal part of it works. It's almost better not to get your hopes up with any one name and just call it Yellow Car for a long time, because if you want to call it Bumblebee and then someone says, well, we have Hot Shot available, and you're like, oh, I want Bumblebee, it's
you designed it to be Bumblebee, you wanted
it's a head tripper, and it happens to every designer if you fall in love with a name too early,
especially in the West, especially with the way that the West kind of also handles the trademarks. Sometimes it's just the name of the game at this point, Like, hey, we really need to protect XYZ. I mean,
I never got too caught up into it until later, and then it was fun. Like, oh, we need some names for these missile tanks. Oh, okay, it's a pirate. How about we call it Demolisher? I just called it Missile Tank for 4 months. It was just jet. It wasn't thrust. It was space shuttle. It wasn't Jetfire. That was all a little bit ongoing behind the scenes, but not stuff that was in the discussion yet. I know that might sound a little weird for people, but
no, but it's funny how it works out in the end, though. I just want to also just establish, because I forgot to totally mention him. So Takashi Kuniharu was the one who actually did the final designing of the toy itself. Takashi was a veteran designer at Takara for many years. I think his first gig with Transformers was Hot Rod and Rodimus, actually. But he was, up to that point, he was hot off of doing the bad guy leader figures of Transformers. He did the Gigatron Megatron from Robots in Disguise. He did Magmatron from Beast Wars Neo. And he would go on to then do this here. So he was the one who did the final designing of it and everything. Just to get into it now, so the combining element with Megatron, right? How did that come about? Was it something where they were like, okay, we really need to have a product for Megatron that gives him all this weaponry and armor and stuff? When you developed Megatron, was that even something considered at the beginning? Or was this something that happened afterwards?
So I don't remember the details of first, second, third, but I do recall there are a few times that they express the need for a certain type of product to hit certain metrics in their unique market. So on the Western market, we have Christmas, we have Easter, we have birthdays. Those are signature buying, sells kind of seasons.
Yeah.
Japan's are different. Okay, they have one in August. I think they got another one in the spring. That's separate from Hanami. They also might also culturally celebrate a gift-giving season in the Christmas season while not being Christian. But so there were different times that they had conversations with us that they said, we need certain level of items at different sequences than you. How do we make this work? And we figured it out. We were like, okay, we'll take a higher price item in the summer when we usually wouldn't, or a unique type of combo feature because that's what's needed for your golden week, and we'll make it work. That's what overload is, right? So I remember those conversations, and then us also saying, we are trying to reestablish Armada. We're trying to reestablish Autobots and Decepticons. We will not communicate the same way you will on our packaging and even in our instructions about this combining mode. So when we developed Megatron, we definitely didn't talk about a combining mode, so that was all on them. And then when they came to figuring out, did it need to happen, we just said, Takara, you do your best. That's really something you're going to be advertising and need for your market. You let us know how it is. So I never did a drawing with guns on his arm or the chest moved around or wings on his back. Eric never did one. No one on the West ever touched anything related to that combining mode because it was just something we saw as giving Takara for their Golden Week needs.
So it really was a Jap, and much like, again, how this whole conversation began, the combining to the leader element started with Japan, with God Jinrai, and again, Victory Saber. So it continues that, again, more on the Japanese side. And I guess, judging by what you say here, it sounds like probably Takashi Kuniharu was the one who had to engineer and plan that for the combining element.
Yeah. And Kunihara is perfectly suited. Sorry, Kunihara-san is perfectly suited to do that kind of development.
Oh yeah, especially he did Gigatron just like 2 years prior to that, which was a mess of different things.
I worked. I mean, I got to work with all of them very intimately, and they all to a person had unique skills that were each different. Kunihara-san putting combo guys together and making sound effects and weapon deployment matter was a big thing for him too. So, how Megatron's gun swivels and shoots the projectiles and stuff. That's very, that's in his zone too.
You know what? Now thinking about it,
and he was the most Japanese. So Kobayashi would speak English. Hasui would try to speak English. Yuki-san would do his best and laugh and have fun with it. Yoke-san was a translator for us. Kunihara-san never really tried. He was Japanese and Japanese
to the extreme,
and somehow we learned to communicate, and it was really cool. And one of the more I found to be kind of fun for me relationships actually. And Ajima-san worked really hard to speak English so that you would understand his points. Ajima-san does not want to be misunderstood, so he worked hard to make sure he wouldn't be misunderstood. Kunihara-san just wanted to make cool toys, and let me tell too how fun it is, but it was always just in Japanese.
Well, it just dawned on me now, just thinking about Kunihara-san, because we just mentioned, okay, so we have 3 different vehicles. They combine to make a larger vehicle. They don't have individual robot modes, and they make a giant robot. Kuniharu was the one who developed Magmatron, which was 3 different dinosaurs or dinosaur-like elements. They don't have individual robot modes. They actually combine to make a one dinosaur kind of thing, the Magmasaurus, and then they combine to make a giant robot. So I think actually the germination of this all kind of maybe even starts with Kuniharu with Magmatron in a lot of ways. It's funny, it's the same designer, and those are the 2 items that have very similar kind of style to it.
Every designer has certain skill sets and things that they value and they work hard on. Kobayashi-san is all about accuracy and subtlety and clean lines, right? And Kunihara-san's about play and action and that kind of, I would say, more classic Japanese robot play. And he's older, and that would make sense.
Yeah, he's one of the more veteran guys that are still with the company.
Yeah. He has to. Yeah, he's. It's hard to tell with the Japanese. They all look old and young at the same time, and you don't know how old anybody is.
He's 80 years old.
But
he looks 50.
Yeah.
So to move on. So again, the combined modes in America, while not officially named anywhere, was called Tidal Wave Weapon Mode. That was the combined mode to Megatron. In the Japanese market, used on the copy of the package, it was referred to as Burning Megatron. And today, that's kind of what we refer to it as because it just sounds cooler. We call it the Burning Megatron mode. This toy first started showing up June 29th, 2023. The first reported sighting of it in U.S. packaging was actually in Hong Kong in Toys R Us. Maybe you can answer this to me. So places that aren't Japan, right? We've never really talked about this before, but places that aren't Japan, why do they get English packaging or the Western packaging, and Japan just exclusively gets theirs, but the rest of the world will just get the Western packaging? Is there a specific reason for that? I know the answer, but I want to hear your answer for it. Pretty much.
There is a reason. The world is sliced up between Hasbro and Takara in relation to the Transformer regions. Okay, so Hasbro does not sell Transformers in Korea, for instance. Mm-hmm. That's a Japanese Takara market.
And they had Sonokong at the time, which was also a distributor.
Yeah, but that's all through them, not through Hasbro, right?
Yeah, through Hasbro.
Whereas Hasbro might distribute Transformers through Fun School in India.
Yeah, for the G.I. Joe stuff. Yeah,
you know what I mean. So, so there are different regions. I'm not going to go into it because I don't want to speak out of turn. But I think like Malaysia is a Japanese market. ... So some of the Asian countries or regions are territories that Hasbro has. So they're going to get the English packaging, right? We're not going to regionalize necessarily a Vietnam package.
Totally.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, but it might be a Hasbro territory, so they're going to get the English package, and because it's closer to Hong Kong, makes reason that they might get their delivery first. It might not always be that the truck fell off, something fell off a truck or out of factory, but they're just regionally
that has happened
closer. Yeah. And so they might get a couple shipments, because they probably don't need a lot of shipments to complete their orders in that market. So that's one of the ways that happens. Overall, the world is split and different, between the two companies, we have different regions to market to.
Well, that's why I also show the timeline here, because Hong Kong is the first sighting of it. It's again June 29th, 2003. U.S. packaging. Then it shows up in Colorado at a Kmart July 11th. Just about a week or so after that in Colorado in a Kmart, and then the Japanese version, the Shockwave, shows up literally 6 days later in Japan, July 17th, 2003. So within like 2 weeks of each other, 2-3 weeks of each other, this figure hits all the regions in its own unique packaging for each one of those. And it shows how this was clearly, like you said, a timed item for a specific market for a specific time. And
they can do that. We've talked about it a little bit at times, but Takara had the ability to just you woke up one day and every store in the country had the new item.
Yeah, Japan was amazing with that.
It's a network of mom and pop shops that they know how to deliver to, and they can execute amazing, fun stuff if you are a fan in that market, no doubt. I went to some of those things for Ultraman, whatever, all these little kids running around with their coupons, and just amazing. There's nothing like that, at least in America, at all.
So this character was very well received. A lot of fans really got behind him, really liked it a lot, was very popular, would go on, again, to get a nice new big guy character with a new character, new trademark, and people really dug him. The fact that it was a combiner element helped too. It also kind of was a play set, but kind of wasn't. Would show up again, like we just talked about, in the Armada video game for the PlayStation 2, where he was this gigantic boss character in the toy accurate colors, as we'll call it here. Even got a little bit of merchandising in Japan. Kabaya, which had a very good relationship with Takara, would always do model kits or little PVC figures. There was a little Tidal Wave action figure, which actually had pieces that could combine with Megatron. So that was a nice little thing too that they did during the tail end run of Transformers Micron Detsetsu in Japan.
Were those the PVCs that plugged together, or the kind of miniature action figure?
These were more miniature action figures in a box that didn't transform, not the SCF PVCs that people are more familiar with Armada that did two waves. There was no tidal wave. Those
boxed items, people don't remember those. I mean, they made a couple of those. They made a few,
not even,
right?
It's the tidal wave one is not even documented on the TF Wiki. I am literally looking at it in my collection right now.
You'll have to send me a picture of it. I'm not sure I recall it. I remember Hotshot and Megatron and Optimus.
What's cool about them was they were clearly something that was made to look very show accurate. So they're very nice. Very nice. They don't transform, maybe 5 points of articulation max, but they're nice little products. And then, of course, like I said, the video game. And then afterwards, we'll just jump forward a little bit. And I'm kind of curious here. So when we get into Energon, we're not covering Energon. We're just going to be covering Tidal Wave's presence in that first wave. So here's Energon, first wave. We have a Tidal Wave repaint. Why is he in the first wave? Why is he, even being used in the show? Because we would get other repaints from Armada toys being put into that first wave of Energon. But none of those other guys, the Ultra Magnus, the Treadbolt, which was the Scavenger, those didn't show up in the show, but Tidal Wave did. So not to get too much into Energon, but at least in Tidal Wave's case, what's going on there?
Yeah, I believe to hold the space at shelf, I don't remember what the first Energon item of that scale would have been or price point, but we were probably protecting that shelf space, and that's why we wanted it. I don't remember how it got in the show. But Eric did that deco. Eric C. Benaler did that new color with the lightning and the white and the green and everything. The green reflects our plan for the Energon, although we picked the wrong color. You know what I'm saying? It should have been, It should have been purple then for part of the Energon storyline. So, it was probably like marketing said, hey, this is what we're going to have to re-release, ... We need a new deco quick. And we were uninformed about any story connection. So we just made a deco up. That's why it has the lightning, and it's pretty wild colors, I think. But,
no, that's cool.
So I think that's kind of how it came to be. It was never meant to be a big deal, but it ended up getting in that show. So
the only explanation I could come up with, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, was because the case that it shared with was you had that smaller price point that was the Ultra Magnus, but that Ultra Magnus was also packed with 3 Minicons, which then, of course, bumps it up in the box that it's presented in the price point. So I think maybe it was a companion, the 2 per case with that. I don't know.
I think there's something to do with that. Either we wanted to use the tooling capacity that we still had. So that is to say, we might not have felt like we sold enough of the green version, that there was still sellability there, but we were going into a new year, a new package look and everything. Let's redress this item and continue to try to sell it because we like the mold and it's doing well at that price point. There's those factors that are going to always play in.
And it was also, just to jump in, and it was also that same green version was also packaged and sold in the Japanese market. It has a slight variant. It has like silver paint instead of gold paint, but otherwise it's the same green Eric colors everywhere. So it had a population in the Japanese market too of production.
Yeah, Takara started to try to find opportunities. Right. Normally they don't do redecos or hadn't done a lot of redecos that weren't turned into new characters. So they at that time they were trying to open that up for their market.
Yep. So this character, again, we won't go too much into it, but would exist in Energon, would have a different version later on. It was called Mirage. I guess just for trademark reasons, you know how it is. It was called Mirage over here, but in Japan it was called Shock Fleet. Whole other story. We're not going to dive into that because we'll save that for another time when we talk about Energon. Long story short, trademark lapses in 2007. It was 2007. Transformers was kind of going in a different direction due to some Michael Bay movies. But the trademark lapsed in 2007. Other companies would use the Tidal Wave name, but then they would lose it. But it would then come home back again during Transformers Titan's Return in 2017. They would use that for a figure there, and Tidal Wave would then be back under the Hasbro umbrella. And then trademark would be refreshed in 2021. And then in 2024, we will be having the Transformers Legacy United Titan class Armada Universe Tidal Wave. That's a mouthful. So first, before we get into the new one, so any final thoughts about the development of this one, about the original that you worked on?
Not particularly, other than I find it to be a really unique item within the pantheon of robots over the 40 years. So I'm very proud of it, and it people remember that one. People definitely remember it, and so that's a very satisfying thing to have been able to again add a character that is now, in the mindset, so to speak, of big, amazing Transformers. So I'm just once again humbled and proud.
Whenever you do your instructions, your little your instructions paintings and stuff, I'm pretty sure Tidal Wave ones just sell instantly. So that's also a reflection of the popularity of the character, as opposed to maybe some other Armada or Energon characters, where the Tidal Wave ones, you put them up, they sell right away. So there's clearly an interest there. But
and there's the cultural memory of that level of the video game too. People that did play that game.
That is true.
It was like one of the first colossal bots kind of thing that
it's for people who are big gamers. It was a very what was that video game called?
Shadows of Colossus.
Shadows of the Colossus. Thank you.
Yeah.
There you go. I don't know why I was blanking on that one. So it's very, very similar to that, where you were just this small character, and you're just up against this immense, huge boss. And I got to admit, what a great level that is. You're inside Tidal Wave as a base.
Yeah,
and
you
he transforms, then you face him. Like, it was very cinematic. And I'm pretty sure a lot of fans, again, even the gamer people who weren't really engaging with toy product, remember that.
Yeah, check out videos of it. It's pretty cool.
It's pretty intense. It's pretty awesome. But again, last thing we're going to cover is, so now we saw at the Singapore Comic-Con, and we're probably, as of this recording, we're going to be soon getting a video from Hasbro really fleshing it out, designed by Sam Smith, along with Shogo Hasui, the brand new, again, Legacy United Tidal Wave Titan class for 2024. We don't have a release date yet. You've seen it. You've seen a lot of the photos, the turnarounds, the images, the fact that it combines with the Megatron that they made previously last year. What are your thoughts?
Hey, man, it's really cool. And the fact that he's as big as he is really the cool thing. I mean, the first one's pretty tall, good enough, but in this new era, it's really cool to see something that large. Once again, I don't know what the right word is. That I respect how close they tacked towards the original. I would have thought that maybe the separating of the three parts would have been passé and not needed. I would have thought that you could improve the design of the spaceship, perhaps, as a whole vehicle that turned into a giant robot, as they've done with the Ark and Nemesis. But they accurately, thoughtfully kind of matched the Armada style of that character. So I can't complain. It's amazing. I still miss my mini-cons, but
I still think
I'm very humbled. Again, it's cool that this stuff from that time is worth not only redoing, but really updoing, and that's really cool. So I'm very supportive. And the fact, again, like we've been talking, the fact that he's purple is what he originally was meant to be. So it works for me.
What are your thoughts on the fact that they were able to kind of work a way where they could still combine it with the Megatron by including miniature versions of himself?
Yeah.
All over it?
Yeah. I like that. I applaud that. That's my kind of goofy toy answer to problems that we make in our own heads, right? Does he need to combine? I don't know. But if we're going to make it work, the scale,
well, like you said before.
But I made the little tank.
The right answer for the different question.
Yeah. You remember I made the little Armada tank for the Energon Megatron.
That's true.
So like this you solve your creative problem however you want to, because none of it is locked. So that's how they solved it, and I don't have a problem with it. That's fun.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very cool. Well,
and it echoes. There's no way Japan wanted to make that item and not do that combining.
Of course.
So,
well, the second we saw that Megatron, it was just a matter of time.
And just, there's the holes in the clips for overload and a Jetfire someday. We'll see. Whether or not they're actively figuring it out, at least the setup is there that they can if they want to.
They will. They will for sure. Anyways, that's it more or less. We just wanted to kind of just do a nice top to bottom of everything going on with the new Tidal Wave, and then of course addressing the old one and its history. We like to do these like complete segments like this 101 of how a toy was developed from the people who were actually behind them. So there's every stone is turned in a lot of ways. But that was Transformers Armada Tidal Wave. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and I hope you guys have been enjoying all the stuff we've been doing in 2023. The year will be up soon. Probably by the time you're listening to this, it might be up already. But thank you again for all the love and support that we have here on the Toy Armada. And again, going to Aaron's live streams and super chatting and asking questions and everything. That's always welcome too. Anything else that we want to say, Aaron, before we wrap up today's Tidal Wave segment that you want to say to the fans?
It's been a great year, and we got some other continuing additions to go on this, and just appreciate the conversations.
Awesome. And this is the Toy Armada with Aaron Archer, and I'm your host, Protoman. And again, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you in the near future.